So let's get into a couple of the other games. A top 12 team, Dalton, that won big time was Ole Miss beating South Carolina 27-3 in this one. Let's go over the highest grade players, starting off with the Rebels in this one. Trey Amos was the highest grade player at 82.2, Walter Nolen at 82.1, Kari Coleman at 80.8, Yam Banks at a 78.4, Jordan Watkins at a 72.5, and Jackson Dart at a 69.9. And then going over to South Carolina for their highest grade players, TJ Sanders at an 80.3, Bengali Kamara at a 76.1, Demetrius Knight Jr. at a 73, DQ Smith at a 72.9, Alex Huntley at a 72.9 as well, and Lenore Sellers rounding it out with a 59.3 grade. Dawn, for you, what was the set to tell the story in this really great bounce back win for Ole Miss?
Yeah, at least a great bounce back for their defense. I think there's still some work to be done on offense, and I think it shows there with 9 of those top 10 players in this game on defense, right? And South Carolina's always got a great defense. But no, Ole Miss, 90.9 team run D grade. And if you want to beat South Carolina, it's Rocket Sanders, it's Lenore Sellers, it's the run game. Sellers can hurt you with his arm, but he's very inconsistent. You stop the run, you're living against South Carolina. 90.9 team run D grade. They only allowed 4 yards flat per design carry, 17 stops, 1 missed tackle as a unit in run defense for Ole Miss. Could we argue that their front seven, maybe other than, say, Trey Harris, their front seven's actually been the best part of their team this year?
I would say so.
They are leading the nation in run defense grade. It's somewhere, I think it's above a 96 for the year. We wanted in the offseason Ole Miss to fix their front seven, and it looks like they've done it. And Princely Umanmielen didn't even play in this game. They've been really, really good up front, and their ability to stop the run is actually something keeping them in and winning a lot of these games, and I don't even think they did a terrible job of it, even against Kentucky. They didn't score against Kentucky. Their defense was good enough to win that Kentucky game. They've been good enough to win every week. Front seven's a big story right now for Ole Miss. They were really good in this game.
They've been spectacular all year. I believe either them or Miami leads the nation in defensive line grade this year. I got to look it up after this week. But yeah, Ole Miss's defensive line has been spectacular. And a big reason for that, Dawn, you look at South Carolina in this one. So 4.9 yards per run for South Carolina. That's actually pretty solid against that Ole Miss defensive line that you mentioned has the highest run D grade in the country. 4.9 yards per run. 4.9 yards per pass as well for South Carolina. They had nothing going in the passing game. Negative .336 EPA per pass. Lenore Sellers, 51.2 passing grade. His average time to throw was 3.09 seconds. You cannot do that against this defensive line with all the dudes they have in that defensive line, even without Princely Umanmielen. They have a ton of other defensive linemen that are very, very good. With that defensive line being one of the best in the country, and with the South Carolina offensive line being their biggest weakness right now, we mentioned in the preview that that's a big mismatch. You got to be like Will Rogers. Get rid of that football quickly. 2.1 seconds, whatever it was for Will Rogers, not 3.1 seconds that it was for the Lenore Sellers in this one. He was under pressure on 20 of his 44 dropbacks in this game. And Ole Miss, to their credit, I will say, 81.9 coverage grade in this one as well. The receivers for South Carolina were not getting open. When you have no open receivers, that's when you hold on to the football for a little bit. And again, with that D-line against that O-line, big mismatch, and that's why they couldn't do anything throwing the ball in this one, because the receivers weren't getting open. The offensive line was struggling protecting Lenore Sellers. It was just an all-around domination from that Ole Miss pass defense in this one. That's ultimately why South Carolina could only put up 3 points on the board in this one.
Yeah, and this is going to be the thing moving forward for South Carolina. They are a lot further along than we thought they'd be, especially on defense. They're a much more competitive team than I think we thought they would be, but they have to find something in the passing game. I think when you base your run game around Lenore Sellers in the future, it's going to be pretty good. I mean, he's a dynamic athlete, but they have to get more consistent in the pass game and find these receivers. I agree with that.
So who was the most impressive part in this game for you?
Oh, man, this is a guy I've wanted to talk about for weeks because it's so much fun. Max, we've expressed enough on the show that we love two-way superstars, right? And we always talk about the same one every week. I got a second one for you.
Oh, let's do it.
J.J. Pegues, the defensive tackle. He's 325 pounds, okay? In this game, a 67.8 defensive grade, 3 pressures, a stop, but also 2 rushing touchdowns in this game for the 325-pounder Wildcat quarterback.
Hell yeah.
And it threw me off because in past weeks he was wearing number 38. And this week, I was like, they put in some number 89, some other big guy at quarter. I was like, who is this? Oh, no, it's him. He switched his number this week to 89 for whatever reason. And I was like, oh, it's still JJ. This is awesome. And in past weeks, he lines up, especially down on the goal line, at fullback. He gets in their heavy sets, and he's lead blocking. And I don't think he's caught a ball this year. I'm pretty sure he hasn't yet. But look, two-way superstar. Okay, he's played a decent amount of snaps on offense, especially down the goal line. This year, an 80.5 defensive grade, a 92.4 offensive grade. He's mowing people down as a lead blocker. He's playing the run well, especially like we've mentioned. He's got a really good run D grade for the season. And now he's got 2 rushing touchdowns against an SEC opponent. I just love watching it. I love seeing those big defensive guys. Like, remember when you used to see, like, Dontari Poe and guys like that play on offense too. This is just a type of fun thing that can spark your team. Absolutely. And look, 2 rushing touchdowns. He scored as many points as the rest of the offense did. Let's be real. So, I mean, it's big time. We mentioned defensive linemen, and this D-line is really good, but apparently they're good enough to play offense too.
I love that. Drake Holiday in the chat even saying 2 carries, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's a pretty good stat line.
Perfect. It's a perfect game.
That's a perfect game. That's a perfect game for JJ. So shout out to him. That was an amazing game for him. And obviously, Ole Miss's D-line overall was great. I'm going to go with another guy from most impressive part. That is Walter Nolen. Dawn, I have been blown away by Walter Nolen this year. He was the number 1 recruit. Speaking of Travis Hunter, in that 2022 recruiting class, Walter Nolen was the number 1 overall recruit in the country coming out. Travis Hunter was number 2. And Nolen has been solid at A&M. Hasn't been spectacular like Travis Hunter has been, but it's been solid. But with Prince Iman out, Nolen stepped up big time in his absence. 2 sacks, 7 pressures on 27 pass rushing snaps. Career high 7 pressures, by the way, for Walter Nolen. 25% pass rush win rate, 2 run defense stops, and a tackle for loss. So far this year, he has an 86.5 grade this season. He's been great as a pass rusher, great as a run defender. And I will say, we got to give it more time because we got to play better offensive lines because obviously South Carolina's offensive line is not great. They haven't played good offensive lines either. Like Kentucky's offensive line is not good either. But if he keeps his level of play up, and he was the number 1 recruit in the country because of his tools, he could be a first-round pick in a loaded defensive tackle class right now. So Walter Nolen has been balling this year and finally is showing why he was the number 1 player in the country coming out of high school.
It's a huge development. It is. That's a key guy. That was a big-time get in the transfer portal and a guy that they were hoping would fulfill his potential, and he's doing it right now. He's it's impressive what he's doing in the middle. And he didn't play in this game, but what Uman Mielen and Jared Ivey off the edge too has been really good. They are much better in the trenches, especially on the defensive line. This team now they just need to get back on offense and execute what the way they did offensively last year, right? With the skill guys and Jackson Dart. If they could find that again, their front 7 is ready to win big games now. And you're right, Walter Nolen's big reason for it.